How's the Navy doing practice this early on a Sunday?
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 10 surprise attacks that changed history.
Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
For this list, we're examining sneak attacks that made a significant impact on world events, either in the moment or over time. If there's an ambush whose absence from our list ambushed you, surprise us with your picks in the comments. Battle of Trenton. The American Revolutionary War did not begin auspiciously for the American colonists. The Continental Army suffered several defeats early on, leaving morale low, and many felt victory was unlikely. But then, on Christmas and Boxing Day of 1776, General George Washington delivered a Christmas gift, a successful surprise attack.
As he approached the town, Washington split his troops in two. They flanked the enemy positions while American cannonballs rained down. The Hessians were totally surprised.
Under adverse weather conditions, Washington and a force of 2,000 men crossed the icy Delaware River and marched to Trenton, New Jersey. This completely caught the Hessian mercenaries stationed there off guard, as they did not expect an attack in such poor weather. The Hessians were defeated and many were captured. The victory at Trenton arguably saved the fledgling rebellion, as it inspired new recruits and allowed for the creation of the future United States. Battle of Chancellorsville. Sticking with the United States, this attack occurred during the American Civil War. At Chancellorsville, Virginia, the Confederates faced a vastly superior Union force. Against conventional wisdom, General Robert E. Lee divided his forces. One of these divisions was a flanking maneuver among the trees. Lying in wait, this portion, led by General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, attacked while the Union men were eating dinner, catching them completely by surprise. Although the battle is often considered General Lee's greatest victory, its mark on history is perhaps better seen in its aftermath.
He proposes to take his men around the Union Army to attack that flank. Jackson, taking the bulk of the army with him, is going to be leaving Lee in a pretty vulnerable position.
Jackson, Lee's most popular general, died from injuries in the fighting, and he lost many men. Additionally, confidence in Union General Joseph Hooker was shaken, and he was replaced before the decisive Battle of Gettysburg. Operation Focus, the Six-Day War. Basically, since its creation, Israel has had tensions with its Arab neighbors. In 1967, these tensions escalated until the 5th of June, when Israel launched a surprise airstrike on Egyptian airfields. The attack destroyed most of Egypt's air force, and when Jordan and Syria joined the conflict, Israel attacked their air bases too, destroying around 450 aircraft and achieving air supremacy for the duration of the Six-Day War.
The opening attack would be the much-rehearsed Operation Focus. An aerial strike to destroy the Egyptian Air Force on the ground.
This preemptive strike essentially won Israel the war before it began. Operation Focus forced militaries around the world to reevaluate how they deployed aircraft on the ground. Israel's territorial acquisitions during the war also sowed the seeds of conflict in the Middle East for half a century and counting.
Jewish settlements were placed there, and this has made things much more complicated for peacemaking here.
The Battle of Lake Trasamine. Hannibal of Carthage is famous for bringing his army through the Alps, even taking war elephants with him. The Battle of Lake Trasamine is where Hannibal's extraordinary gambit bore fruit. After entering the Roman Republic territory in Italy, Hannibal's men killed many, leading Flaminius, the closest Roman general, to pursue him.
Hannibal's army of 35,000 men waited silently as 25,000 Romans filed past just meters away.
Hannibal laid a trap at Lake Trasamine, where a narrow pass created a choke point against the nearby hills. As the Roman column passed through, the Carthaginian army of 50,000 descended on them and annihilated nearly the entire Roman force. The defeat left the Romans on the back foot for the Second Punic War that followed, and historians often call it one of the most successful ambushes ever made by a large army. The Visigoths' sack of Rome. Rome was sacked many times before the empire fell, but this one set the dominoes falling.
For years we've swallowed Rome's lies and cruelties and grasped at the crumbs from their table.
In 410, Alaric the Visigoth laid siege to the city. Although it wasn't unexpected or even unprecedented, as Alaric had laid siege to Rome several times in the past few years. However, on this occasion, he and the Visigoths gained entry into the city, some say through treachery, and sacked Rome. For context, the last time the city had fallen was around 800 years prior. The sacking sent ripples through both parts of the divided Roman Empire and illustrated to the world and to history that the empire was on the decline. Battle of Stamford Bridge. In 1066, King Harold Godwinson was expecting an invasion by the Normans in southern England. But when word reached him that 300 Norwegian ships, led by his brother Tostig and King Harald Hardrada, had landed in Yorkshire, his priorities shifted. The Norwegian invaders were themselves surprised when King Harold managed to reach them from the other side of England to engage them in battle. The Viking attackers were defeated and their king and Tostig killed. Although the battle is frequently cited as the beginning of the end of the Viking Age, the true cost came 3 weeks later when Harold fought William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings. Had the losses not been so great at Stamford Bridge, William may not have conquered England.
The main reason William the Conqueror won the Battle of Hastings was because King Harold had to march to Stamford Bridge and defeat the Vikings first. So you planned to save him the journey?
Tet Offensive. On January 30th, 1968, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese launched a wide-scale coordinated attack on U.S. and South Vietnamese targets throughout South Vietnam. The fighting took place in over 100 locations across the country and was intended to inspire an uprising by the citizens and defections to the Communist North Vietnamese cause. The campaign, which lasted several months, was a failure for the North Vietnamese, at least on a military front. In light of greater calls by the American military for more recruits to combat the more intense fighting, the Tet Offensive rapidly eroded public support for the war among the United States public.
It seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate.
It didn't win the war in the short term, but it arguably did in the long term. Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. December 7, 1941, a date that would live in infamy. After months of rising tensions, Japan launched an unannounced preemptive strike against the United States at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. 8 battleships were lost or damaged, as were many aircrafts, and over 3,000 killed or wounded. The attack was intended to prevent the American fleet from retaliating against Japan for attacking their other holdings in the Pacific. The Americans delivered their own retaliatory surprise attack in the Doolittle Raid the following year, which significantly restored morale. However, the attack had historic consequences.
Your ordnance! Bombs away! One away! Bombs away! Bombs away! 2 away!
It pushed the U.S. to enter World War II, dramatically affecting the outcomes of both the Pacific and European fronts. Pearl Harbor also arguably helped permanently shift American military policy from non-intervention to intervention. September 11. On September 11, 2001, 4 passenger planes were hijacked by al-Qaeda terrorists. 2 crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City. A third struck the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., while the 4th attack was foiled by passengers aboard Flight 93 at the cost of their lives. It's the single deadliest terrorist attack in history, with nearly 3,000 killed and many more injured.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center.
But in the long term, the 9/11 attacks caused the United States to initiate a global campaign against terrorism, as well as a decades-long conflict in Afghanistan. Governments worldwide stepped up security measures against terrorism, and honestly, we've all been more fearful, anxious, and paranoid since that day. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. 1939 Invasion of Poland. On September 1, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Through blitzkrieg tactics, Germany rapidly overcame Polish defenses. And through their alliance with the Soviet Union, Germany managed to conquer Poland in just over a month. Poland was devastated, with thousands killed or wounded and up to 500,000 captured.
Good. Time. That's Cody. Good. Time.
Poland was annexed by both aggressors. But that wasn't even the worst of it. This invasion marks the beginning of World War II. The single largest armed conflict in the history of the world began here. The horrors that took place during this time, like the Holocaust, may not have been possible without it. And the wars that followed, including some on this list, can trace some of their roots back to this invasion.